Okay. All right, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for logging on to attend today's WISE seminar. I have a brief introduction for Savanah, and then just a couple of notes, and then I will let her take over. Savanah Saldaña-Shumaker is a chemistry educator, entrepreneur, and STEM advocate. Throughout her career as a chemist, she has worked in industry, government, startups, and academia in medicinal, analytical, and cosmetic chemistry settings. Currently, Savanah is an instructor of practical applications at the United States Naval Academy, and she is the co-founder of 8 Count Cosmetics. Beyond her teaching and entrepreneurship, Savanah is an active leader in the scientific community and holds volunteer leadership roles in a variety of organizations. In this talk, she will discuss her professional journey, share scientific insights, and provide advice on navigating diverse career paths in STEM. And as we were discussing earlier, maybe a little bit on how she is able to balance all of those roles. And so we would really like to thank Savanah for taking the time out of her busy schedule to speak with the WISE students here at William Patterson. And I will note to the students that if you have a question throughout the lecture, feel free to add it to the chat. If it's pertinent to what Savanah is speaking on at the moment, I'll interrupt her if that's okay with her to ask that question. Or you're welcome to hold the questions until the end of the seminar, where we'll have a short Q&A following the slide presentation. In addition, I'm going to add a link in the chat. This is an anonymous survey that allows us to keep track of our seminars and also helps us maintain funding for our seminars. So I'll ask that all students please complete that survey either during or after the seminar. Okay, so with all of that, I'd like to again welcome Savanah and thank you again for logging on today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm really looking forward to talking to all of you. And we're going to be kind of giving a chemist guide to forging a multifaceted career path. Like Kelly was saying, I balance a lot of different things, and that's all by choice and design. And I'm hoping that kind of going over my career from beginning to now will maybe help all of you decide some directions that you could potentially go in your career, even if it's not necessarily chemistry. So the plan, what we're going to be going over is I'll do a career overview, which is sort of all-encompassing for me. So I'll be talking about where I went to school, where I worked, and different organizations I've been involved in. Then we'll talk about my entrepreneurship and scientific communication sort of facets of my career. And then at the end, I'll be giving a little bit of tips about time management and also how to expand your network, because these are 2 skills that have been really essential for me to be able to balance all of these different commitments. So in terms of career overview, we'll kind of just start from the beginning and move all the way to present day. And I'll be sort of answering these questions of where and when have I studied, worked, and volunteered? Why did I choose those schools, companies, and organizations? What did I do there? And how did it advance my career? So I actually didn't start out as a scientist. I did dancing intensely growing up. I did ballet all the way up until my junior year of high school, where I was offered 2 professional contracts. But I decided that wasn't really the direction I wanted to go in, and I continued to be involved in ethnic folk dancing. My mom's heritage is Ukrainian, my dad's heritage is Mexican, so I was involved in dance companies that celebrated both of those aspects of my culture, but those were not full-time opportunities. And again, I wasn't wanting to pursue dance full-time, so that meant that I needed to do something work-wise. So right after I graduated high school, I enrolled at the Northeast Wisconsin Technical College. This was a trade school style college in my hometown of Green Bay, Wisconsin. That's where I was born and raised. I enrolled in the dental assisting program, where I received a technical diploma. So it was 3 semesters of classes. I chose that simply because I had no skills other than dancing. Again, that's all I had focused on growing up, and I needed to do something until I knew what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. So my mom had me take a placement test, take a look at what programs my grades and knowledge as is would be eligible for. And dental assisting was the one that had the highest and best rate of employment after graduation. So I picked that one. I ended up totally loving it, loving the program. And this is my first exposure to college. Again, I didn't think that was the direction I was going to go in. I thought I was going to go into dancing and performing arts. And at that time, it wasn't super common to go to college for that field. So this totally shifted things in a different direction for me in a really positive way. While studying dental assisting, it was my first dip into scientific and clinical technical skills as well as professionalism. Learned how to put a resume together, how to do a job interview, how to follow a procedure for the different dental assisting techniques, like if someone is doing a filling in a cavity or you're fitting someone for dentures, like what do you do and how do you set up the space, which has kind of carried forward into how do I read experimental procedures. It was also my first dip into student government. Before that, I had been involved in nonprofits. Both of the folk dance troupes that I was a part of were nonprofits, but that was in the dance space. So I was able to kind of continue my volunteer interest. And I was the president and then the vice president of the Northeast Hispanic American Student Association at the school. So I ended up working as a dental assistant for 6 months after I graduated, got to talk to the dentist, learn about their career journey, that you needed a bachelor's degree and then a doctoral degree of dental school. I really loved the dental assisting. I liked taking scientific and health knowledge and helping improve someone's life through set procedures. So I thought, okay, I think I want to go back to school for dental school. So instead of going straight into a four-year university, I actually went back to the community college. That's a thing that is pretty common in Green Bay. I don't know if other places do it, but where I'm from, it's not uncommon for people to do what's called general studies. So that's where you take essentially the general requirements of any major, so your non-major specific classes, take that at the technical school, and then transfer it to one of the four-year degrees. So that's what I did. Then I stayed in my hometown so I could still continue to live at home. Both of my parents and my brother went to this university, University of Wisconsin, Green Bay. This was a way for me to sort of take that next step into receiving a bachelor's degree, but I wasn't going to be putting a ton of financial strain on myself. Paid for pretty much everything through student loans, but at least I was able to live at home and drive like 7 minutes to campus. So kind of ease the financial burden there a little bit. I earned a Bachelor of Science in Human Biology with a health science emphasis. So at UWGB, health science emphasis is, we called it the pre-degree. So pre-dental, pre-med, pre-physical therapist, pre-anything in a clinical health setting. And it was in that time that I got involved with chemistry. So like I just said, my major was human biology. It wasn't chemistry, but I ended up becoming really good friends with several pre-pharmacy students, and they were all chemistry majors. And my junior year of undergrad, I did really, really poorly in one of the semesters. I pretty much failed everything. I was having some health problems, some like personal life problems. I was really struggling with just a lot of areas of life, and that affected how I did in school. I did really, really poorly. However, I wanted to take advanced organic chemistry and organic synthesis research with all of my friends for my senior year. So I really buckled down, took summer school, pretty much retook an entire semester worth of classes without falling behind on the calendar year, so that my senior year I could totally focus on chemistry, even though I didn't need to because it wasn't required for my major. I was in the lab of Dr. Julie Wondergem. She taught the advanced organic lecture and lab that I took. And then I was also involved in her research project. So I actually have some little snippets of our first poster. It wasn't even a full poster. It was like a poster board because we didn't have the resources for that. But it was a 3-part synthesis where each of us on the team were assigned one of the steps. I did the part that's on the right towards the bottom, the Lewis acid work. I just chose that one because nobody else wanted to work on that step. Again, I just wanted to fill the gap, get involved in any way that I could. And the goal was to create this product or do natural product synthesis. And it is known for having cytotoxicity against nasopharyngeal carcinoma. So that kind of caught my interest because it's nasal facial cancer. And that tied in with my plans at that time to go to dental school. However, literally like 3 weeks before graduation, she invited 2 guests, so someone she used to work with in the pharmaceutical industry, to come in and talk about how they were going to be creating this brand new master's program at the pharmacy school outside of Milwaukee, about 2 hours away, where you would learn how to do chemistry or biological assays, really any sort of bench science skill, and put it towards product development. They mostly talked about pharmaceutical and drug product development. And at this point, I got really excited about chemistry. I liked doing it, but I didn't really know what you could do with a chemistry degree. So to hear that, okay, these experiments and these techniques I'm learning could actually end up at a part of something that's on a shelf totally caught my attention. And I decided to completely shift gears, applied to the program last minute, and they accepted me. But I didn't really have a lot of money at that time. So I kind of jumped into my first science job, if you will, the summer after I graduated from undergrad. So food safety net services is a really common place for new UWGB graduates to work in town. Some people work there because they want to get more experience put on the resume for grad school. Some people like me needed to save up money before going for more schooling. It's just a convenient place, and they commonly hire those UWGB graduates. My role was pathology lab analyst. What that means is I basically performed a bunch of different microbiology tests on manufactured food products. This helped me in my career in the sense that I pretty much was working by myself, third shift. So from 8 p.m. to like 5 or 6 a.m. by myself. They left me alone like my third day on the job. So that's where I learned how to kind of pull from the dental assisting experience and read an SOP, read a procedure, follow it down to the T, because everything had to be done really precise, because we're determining if these samples from different batches of food are safe to now go to the grocery stores and to the consumer. Again, this was my first lab job, so that was really exciting. It was like the space I was in was considered the advanced lab because we were doing more than just like measuring temperatures, doing basic sample experiments. This was my first exposure to state-of-the-art lab automation. So all of these experiments, rather than doing them by hand, we would set them up by hand, prepare plates, do some pipetting by hand. Then everything went into these big instruments, and they would perform different tests, which is very different than what I had learned to do in school. So that really piqued my interest and is something that I kind of came back to a little bit later. And we'll talk about that when we get to my time at NIH. I also learned to do routine sanitization of the pathology lab, which wasn't that different from dental assisting, because again, there's living things and you want it all to be dead and clean. Also learned to do a lot of different types of paperwork. Everything was very official. It needs to be trackable for these different batches of food. And then also I got to help prepare for several safety audits. So all of these skills kind of came in handy later in chemistry settings because it would fall under the category of lab management, if you will. So after a summer of doing that, I moved to Mequon, Wisconsin, which was only about 2 hours away from my hometown of Green Bay. But this was my first time living on my own, being completely by myself. And it was a really great smooth transition after that intense summer of working third shift. And I was also teaching dance all day at that time at the local dance studio where I had been teaching ballet all of through college. So I was working third shift from like 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. that summer, would go home, take a nap, and then teach ballet from like 11 a.m. I think till 6 or 7 p.m. Very crazy schedule. I was totally worn out. So even though I was moving to a new place, new setting, it was relaxing in a way because I had like less hours per day where I was required to do things. Again, like we talked about, I chose to go to this school because of this unique product development program. While there, I earned a Master of Science in Chemical Product Development and also an MBA certificate in management. So built into the Master of Science program, you had the option to take 5 different MBA classes on an area of interest. Some people did kind of a more financial angle. Some people did an innovation angle. I decided to do management. So I would say it was about 75% chemistry, 25% business. And this was when I kind of fully converted from that pre-dental kind of more biology, health-focused person into a chemist. So in terms of the student experience, there was sort of 2 sides of it. At the School of Pharmacy, I studied under Dr. Christopher W. Cunningham. My thesis was titled Scale-Up Synthesis and Preclinical Evaluation of Cannabinoid Allosteric Modulators. If you want to look up about those topics, literally if you just look up Dr. Christopher W. Cunningham, whole bunch of stuff. He has a great blog online where you can read about what his group is still continuing to do. He's just a really amazing person to work with. If you don't know what scale-up synthesis is, all this means is instead of doing a reaction on a milligram scale like you might do in a class, you're converting it into a large scale with the intention that it's going to go into clinical testing and eventually a manufacturer scale. just like when you cook a small amount of food versus a big amount of food, you kind of have to adjust the temperature, how long it's cooking for, how long it takes to strain it at the end. Similar principle applied to chemistry and synthesis. And then also I kind of took an angle of trying to make the synthetic route more sustainable and greener. So could we do less steps? Could you skip purification in between any of the steps? Could we use less solvents? Could we switch to like non-halogenated chemicals, things like that? Because that was an interest of mine too. I don't have a publication you can look up for that project because it's part of a bigger ongoing project, but there are a few others that you could read on similar topics. Again, just look up Dr. Christopher W. Cunningham. On the other hand, in the Batterman School of Business at Concordia, the MBA certificate was a hybrid of online and in-person classes, and this allowed us to do our lab work, prepare for our thesis, all of our coursework, and kind of do the MBA part on our own time. I really liked it because it kind of echoed my experience at NWTC at the trade school type of situation. There was expectations for how you dressed at networking events for the seminar. Everyone was required to ask a question. We were required to have business cards anytime we went to events. It really kind of helped include professionalism in the way you behave and the way you present yourself and represent your project, the school, your classmates, in a way that I've tried to carry forward. Again, it's not just what's going on in your life or in that day, you're part of a bigger group. We also had a lot of opportunities to participate in like pitch competitions. For one of our classes, we made what we would envision for a potential business project. So this wasn't a formal part of our thesis. For mine, I created like a fake TV show that would educate adults on chemistry basics. And then the former mayor of that town actually came and we got to sort of pitch him our ideas. And he was like, okay, yeah, I think, you probably would get funding if this was a real pitch. If someone's wasn't good enough, he would tell you why. So just a lot of really intense business experiences that I wasn't ever thinking I would do back when I was planning on dancing. So on the flip side, I was at Concordia also working. So before, during, and after my master's degree, I actually worked there for Dr. Cunningham. After I interviewed for the MS/MBA program, Dr. Cunningham offered me a position. He was just getting started out, didn't have tenure yet, and he had a little bit of money for a part-time lab tech. And I needed to make money because it was a standalone master's program. So you can do a master's degree a couple different ways. The more traditional way, or the way people think of, is you go for a PhD program, and then at the beginning, there's a point where you get accepted to continue for the PhD. And then if you don't get accepted, you get to walk away with the master's degree. Or you can just decide at that point, like, hey, I want to stop here. It's been great, but I'd like to do something else. Some people have a negative connotation of that, and they could call it mastering out. They'll be like, oh, did you master out? This is a standalone master's program. I think no matter what path you choose to go with your education, that's totally up to you. I think they're all valid. You still earned it. When you do a standalone master's degree, the thing is there's not the opportunity to get funding through the program. So pretty much all of us who were in the program full-time also had a full-time job separate from that. So for me, that was working for Dr. Cunningham. And I also had a part-time job as a cashier person at Walgreens. And after I defended my thesis, he got some more funding, was able to keep me on longer as a staff scientist. So in total, I was there for like 4.5 years as an entry-level technician, all the way up to a staff level scientist. So I got to grow in my career there. And if you look up my name, I do have 2 publications from that time. Then after I finished the MBA portion, they were kind of concerned that there wasn't enough marketing happening for the program and enrollment was starting to go down. So created a new position for me where I was program coordinator for the very master's program that I had just graduated from. So that was really exciting. And that was also kind of like an introduction into sort of administrative and corporate tasks. Like up until then, I had never set an away message. I'd never set up like a Zoom meeting, things like that now seem really simple, or for maybe a lot of you, those things seem really simple, but I had never been coached to do those things before. So it was another way to sort of bump myself up the career ladder. Something that I really took away from my time working at Concordia is the ability to find success through community building. And I kind of mentioned before, like why I chose doing that Lewis acid portion of my organic research at UWGB. I just wanted to fill the gap where no one else wanted to do that task. It sounds really cheesy, but if you can bridge the gap or fulfill the need, there's a really good way for you to sort of put skills under your belt and just get more security in whatever your role is. So for example, as a research scientist at the school, there was a point in time where there was some lapses in funding or we didn't quite have enough funding. So what we did is essentially started advertising my skills for synthesis and analytical chemistry. And for other schools in the area or small groups who didn't have the expertise, they could come to us and we would price out what me doing the synthesis for them quickly would be, or developing some type of analytical technique or doing analytical data analysis for them. And we were able to, again, keep the position, keep things going in the group. As a program coordinator, I increased enrollment in the program by over 400% in just 6 months by going to different in-person events and online recruiting. So if you've ever been to a conference or some sort of recruiting event, someone has a table with all the swag, they're telling you about it. I literally just went and told people about it. People don't know what they don't know. And by taking the time to go out into the community, talk to people, tell them about this great opportunity, we could get them to join the program because they just didn't know that the opportunity was there. So that was all really good and I enjoyed my time there. But you might be asking, why did you leave? So 2020 happened, COVID happened, everyone was at home, and I'd kind of sort of hit the maximum of what I was going to be able to do in that role, whether it was pay, whether it was responsibilities, whether it was title. It was a small private pharmacy school, really loved the group, but there was only so far that I could go in that role. And I was actually looking for a position for a friend of mine. She was at a top 10 pharmaceutical company in the Midwest, and she was a contractor. And they pretty much told her, we're not going to have the funding or the position to bring you on as, a regular staff for the next 2 to 3 years. And so she was like, I think I want to move on to something else. And I had been to a conference in Maryland while in Dr. Cunningham's lab, and I really liked it. I saw how many biotech, pharmaceutical, government opportunities there were. And I told my friend, maybe you should take a look at the East Coast. So I was looking for jobs for her for vaccine formulation. I somehow found this NMR spectroscopy position at National Institutes of Health. And I had been kind of thinking that I might want to go back to school for NMR specifically, or maybe try to find a different job in that area because I was really starting to become passionate about that analytical technique. And then lo and behold, totally by chance, found this open position while looking for a position for my friend and decided to take the plunge. So I moved to Rockville, Maryland in 2020, I think it was in October. And the specific institute I was at was National Center for Advancing Translational Sciences. And so I was there as a contractor through Kelly Government Solutions. It's pretty common out here in the DC area to start as a contractor and then get transitioned in later. I started out kind of similar vibes, started out as an NMR chemist and then kind of moved up to the next title of full NMR spectroscopist during the 4 years that I was there. So this is another opportunity for me to start, exactly where I was at in terms of my skills, get more experience, and then kind of move up to the next step. And this really helped prove to me that I have what it takes, because in the beginning, I was working with the lead senior spectroscopist, learning more about it because, again, I was thinking I might need to go back to school or might need more experience, but I was able to learn a lot on the job. And then by the time I left for my current position, I was pretty much doing all of my own projects and things by myself, giving a whole bunch of different talks and posters, and really just prove that I could make it. So here's a little just demonstration of kind of what it looks like to run an NMR experiment. So if you don't know, NMR stands for nuclear magnetic resonance spectroscopy. So the way I like to compare it is if you've ever seen an MRI setup, instead of a patient laying on their back, sliding into the instrument, I take this glass tube and it goes down into a big magnet. And there'll be kind of like a panning shot. Sort of looks like a big washing machine. So there's not a lot to see on the outside. It's a lot of control happening at the computer. But I was actually able to do a lot of different things that I never thought I would while in this position. One is called fragment-based screening. That's where you have a target or a protein of interest in the body related to a certain disease state that you're wanting to treat. And then you take little bits of compounds, so different functional groups or sort of mini molecules, and you run a screen against each other to see if they're connecting. And then you can use that information to sort of reverse engineer a molecule that could potentially become the active ingredient in a new medicine. I also got more experience of laboratory automation. So I had seen some state-of-the-art automated equipment while at Food Safety Net Services, and this sort of all circled back. A huge chunk of what I did there was creating these automated systems for preparing hundreds or thousands of samples for NMR experiments and kind of doing it all not by hand. So rather than, pipetting into each individual long skinny tube that you saw in the video or doing everything manual, working on developing these robotic platforms. And we actually have a publication on that will be coming out soon. So hopefully you guys can check it out in a couple months or whenever it comes out. Also structure identification. So if any of your chemistry majors are taking organic chemistry, this is probably when you'll use NMR the most at your level, is using the data output to kind of say, is my structure what I think it is? Or quantitative Q NMR, which is kind of more math-oriented NMR, and then facilities management, which is just maintaining all of these instruments. Are all the consumables there? Are liquid nitrogen, liquid helium that we need to go inside of the magnet to keep it cold? Kind of all of those things coming together. While at NCATS, I also was a part of something totally different to the role, but not that different from my job and my interests thus far. So there is a group through National Institutes of Health called Women Scientist Advisors, or WSA. And I joined it just so I could kind of meet other women at the Institute, see what they had going on. And I joined right as a brand new initiative was being created, and I actually ended up becoming one of the 3 leaders of it. We called it the Community Outreach Initiative. And so this involved going out to different schools or groups like Girl Scouts, different programs, and kind of telling them what is translational science, what are we doing, what do scientists do, rather than just things you might see on TV or in the movies. We did career panels for the older students, one-on-one chats for people who had science questions, as well as role-playing activities for little kids. So it's kind of like the murder mystery concept where everyone had to work together as a team to solve a mystery, but it was a science mystery. We initially had a goal of doing 6 events in the 2022 to 2023 school year. So we're like, if we do 3 in the fall, 3 in the spring, that'll be good enough for us. It ended up being a huge hit, and we ended up doubling that with over 12 events in the year, and it became a formal detail. So what that means is in the government, a detail is a role that you do for a fixed amount of time while still working your regular job. So when we created this program, this had to be done in our free time. So if we went to an event, we needed to make it up later, versus in a detail, it's actually part of your professional development and part of your role. And we ended up winning directors awards at both the NCATS institution level and the full NIH level. So this ended up being a really valuable experience, not just for us as, leaders putting this program together, but also for the local community to kind of see what it is to do science as a team. Then had another kind of sudden shift in career. Again, you might be thinking to yourself, again, if everything was going so well, why did you switch positions? This is where being open to new opportunities really comes in handy. So on top of that community outreach initiative, I was starting to get involved with other volunteer organizations, which we'll talk about in a minute. Was starting to mentor young scientists more, starting to do more career panels as an individual, separate from community outreach, giving different seminars. And I actually was invited to look into this role after being on a career panel through Chemical Society of Washington. And one of the professors there was like, hey, there's this position open called Instructor of Practical Applications. It's where you get to teach and manage in the chemistry labs with the chemistry majors. And I realized it was a really great way to sort of tie up the lab management, the mentorship, the traditional chemistry, and the all-around organic and analytical aspects of my career to date. So I decided to take the plunge and go for the position. And I just started there in October of 2020. So what exactly do I do here? I'm an instructor in the integrated lab program, which is for the chemistry majors. So I teach in the first 2 points there, integrated laboratory 1 and integrated laboratory 2. This program is really unique because instead of having separate analytical, organic, PChem, etc., like all separate chemistry labs, they're all combined into one. So you learn how to use these techniques in real situations. So rather than learning how to do, let's say, an extraction, they learn how to do an extraction and how to optimize it for different scenarios. How and when would you do it a certain way? And then it applies into like a real application rather than just learning the static technique. Same thing with the instruments. Instead of just learning about how to, turn it on, how to run a sample, how to do these different things, as part of a bigger procedure. So I really like getting to help people have that really hands-on experience because that's what got me excited about chemistry. Now, in addition to kind of the academic journey and the professional journey, I've also had a volunteer journey. Like I said, the folk dancing that I did was volunteer based because they were nonprofits. Then I was involved in student government a little bit at NWTC. Then I kind of came back to volunteering at NCATS with the Community Outreach Initiative. And I realized in like 2021, early 2022, when things post-COVID were starting to open back up again, I was like, wow, I've been living out here in Maryland in a new state for about a year and a half. And I feel like I still haven't really fit into the local scientific community, haven't made a splash like I would want to. So I just started getting involved with different events and slowly and organically became a leader in these different things. So one is Women in Bio Capital Region. I believe there's a New Jersey chapter of this as well. I started out as vice chair of the sponsorship committee. Then for a year was the co-chair. And now in my third year, I'm kind of like the solo chair. So leading the sponsorship committee. And that means working with different companies to gather funding so we can put together our programs. Then after giving a couple talks at different NMR conferences, I was invited to be a part of practical applications of NMR and Industry Conference, or PANIC, and I'm on the scientific organizing committee. So what that means is we're the people who plan the content, the speakers, the sessions for in-person conferences. So our next one is going to be in May in Rockville, Maryland, and I'm also one of the social media managers. Then after attending another event, I was invited to join Chemical Society of Washington, and I ran in one of their elections as a manager at large. I'm also the budget committee lead, and this year I'm co-coordinating the Chemistry Olympiad. So it's a local and national chemistry exam competition. We have that happening this Saturday at American Chemical Society headquarters in DC, so super excited about that. And then the kind of most recent addition to the list is the Washington Area Magnetic Resonance Association. I was invited to join as a committee member. So really, if you take anything away from this, again, I would like to say, try to fill those gaps and just be involved. Like if someone asks for something, I would do it, or say, do you know how to do this? Like social media. I said, sure. At my previous job, I used social media to help increase participation in this program by 400+% and use that skill to help a different organization get more attention online, things like that. And then that just led to literally invitations. I think the only role I formally applied to without being invited to submit was Women in Bio, because that was the first one I was involved in when I was trying to put myself out there more. So it kind of takes a little bit to get the ball rolling, but if you want to be recognized as a leader and be seen as a leader, it's totally possible. All right, so sort of switching gears into entrepreneurship, while all of this was happening, so the tail end of my time at Concordia, before I moved to Maryland, all the way through present time, I had this other sequence of events happening too. So the first of two business projects is called SCS Laboratory Solutions. Again, founded this when I was in Wisconsin, continued into my current life in Maryland. I created this company because I felt there was a lack of innovation in anhydrous chemical storage and handling. If you don't know what that means, all it is chemicals that are extremely dry. So there's no atmospheric moisture, no moisture in the bottle. They just need to be super dry for your chemical reactions to work properly. Formed a C Corp. We won't get too into the business terms, but there's different ways you can structure your business. Based on the nature of this project, we chose that. My role is co-president, and I'm also the co-founder. There's three of us, myself. His name is Grant. He's sort of the engineer on the project. And then my husband, Brian, does all of the business administration. This has been what I like to call a slow burn. It's very much probably the lowest priority right now. We're on a little bit of a pause just because there's a lot of other things going on. But we've been really sort of muscling our way through. This is definitely the project where we kind of learned everything the hard way. So the initial idea where this all comes from is these photos demonstrate the current way of handling anhydrous liquid chemicals, and I feel that it's very outdated. So first you retrieve gas either from a tank onto a balloon, or some labs will have an in-house line that's in the fume hoods. You need to put a little needle on that gas source, plunge it into this rubber septa on the top right that covers the anhydrous liquid chemicals, and then put a syringe into that. And the idea is that as you're pulling liquid out into your syringe, it's getting replaced with inert gas. That works fine, but there's multiple points for water to be introduced into the sample through the atmosphere. Again, you're just moving a lot of things back and forth. You have to pull two needles out at the same time. And I just found when I've done work like this a lot, it wasn't super great. A lot of times I had to repurify the chemicals. So you're doing another chemical reaction just to try to get to square one, creating more excessive waste. Some people will just throw the bottle out, even if it's half empty. And I just really wanted to reduce the amount of hazardous waste that's created when working with these types of chemicals, but also make the procedure a lot safer. So I can't show you the innovation yet because it's not on the market. This is a picture of myself and Grant dropping our device off to get tested a couple years ago. The innovation, we called it the anhydrous chemical transfer device. Nothing very flashy yet. It's not on the market. You're still very early stages of development. But kind of the whole appeal is that you won't need electricity to use it. You set up this apparatus when your bottle of chemicals is new, and then you don't have to do anything with it until the bottle is completely consumed and empty. Then you can tear it down, reuse it, clean it up, and use it again. So in terms of progress to date, before we formed our business entity, we participated in something called the National Science Foundation's Innovation Corps program, or NSF I-Corps. I learned about this through some of my business professors. This is where you do customer discovery, interview people who might be your customers to say, hey, is there really a need for this innovation? Do other people think this is a problem? Is it worth pursuing? So that went really well, and we found that, yeah, I think we should pursue it. So then at Concordia, they had in-residence venture capitalist program. So someone who invests in businesses was willing to meet with students or alumni of the school and kind of take a look at what your idea is and tell you if it was worth pursuing. Through that, we were able to participate in University of Wisconsin-Madison's Law and Entrepreneurship Clinic. So that's where a law student, for a grade on their end, did some legal work for us for free. So that led to us developing or putting together our provisional patent that allowed us to do some prototype testing at Concordia, because you need a patent to protect your innovation. So then after that patent was filed, we were able to do more work with a venture capital firm. So now this is in Maryland. We participated in a proposal lab. So that's where you refine how you put together a packet of information, essentially asking for money. Did a program that they offer called Prelude Pitch, which is where you kind of like Shark Tank go in and practice what you would sound like when you pitch for funding. And then also spent a year in their Deaf Tech program, which is something that in theory can connect you with who could maybe test or provide certain services to help your innovation move along. So just to kind of wrap up on that, we're at the point where the next needs that we have are like just out of our price range. And I have had success with self-funding, which is we're going to talk about next. And also just some changes in the marketplace led us to believe we kind of want to put this on pause for now, see if a trend in this area that's going on is going to die down. If it doesn't die down, then there might not be interest in our product. But if it does die down, this new trend doesn't work, it'll be the perfect time for us to jump back in and be like, hey, like we have this idea, let's keep it moving. So right now it's kind of on a pause. The project that I've worked on that has gone to market is called 8 Count Cosmetics. So I started this company with my friend Michael, who's in the photo. We were in a performing arts summer program together way back when we were 15. We're now 33. And during COVID, he wasn't performing anymore. So he did go into a professional performing arts career and had some downtime because no shows were happening, no tours were happening, nothing was happening during the pandemic. And we just kind of started talking about how there's a lack of innovation and inclusivity in performing arts makeup. Makeup for arts is supposed to be a tool, but it's not really treated as such. So we decided to take our idea forward. We formed a limited liability corporation, or an LLC, which is kind of the simplest way you can go about protecting your business. We are both co-founders. He's the artistic director, director of creative vision, and I'm the director of product and business development. And again, we actually took our idea between 2020 and 2024, all the way from conception, development to market. So kind of the problem we wanted to address is that a lot of performing arts makeup is very poorly formulated, which makes it not very inclusive. And if something is poorly formulated, it's going to be a poor performance and you're not going to look great on stage. So traditional theatrical makeup is made from oil and dyes. So we know that oil and water, aka sweat, are insoluble. Oil and water don't mix. Dye and water do mix. So if you're sweating, the oil that's carrying the makeup, but the colors are going to separate because those colors are leaching into your sweat, and you just get this sort of non-uniform look, and it's not a clean picture on stage anymore. And that lack of color consistency, in addition to just not being inclusive, because if there's different levels of thickness depending on how much someone sweats, then that's going to look different on different skin tones. And overall, you're just not going to look uniform on stage. And this is a problem. Additionally, a lot of people will turn to other ingredients or additives to try to overcome this issue, which then becomes a workplace hazard. We've seen people put hairspray or glue on their face to try to seal in makeup. Some people use commercial paint, like you put on a wall on their face. A lot of really unsafe practices for people who use makeup all the time as part of their job. So our solution were these two products launched in August. The first is the original OG palette. We pretty much wanted these bright colors to be concealer-like rather than like an eyeshadow or a lotion. So it's a thick cream that will have nice coverage on everyone. We use pigments, not dyes. So when you're sweating, the colors won't absorb into the sweat and trickle down your face. And then there's 5 bright colors, but you can also mix that white color in the middle to create a secondary palette. So it is also more cost effective. We manufacture our products in Canada because they're Health Canada quality ingredients. There are some ingredients that are allowed, or the quality of the ingredients is a little bit less strict in the United States. And so we wanted to go above and beyond what we were legally required to do and kind of take it up a notch so that those performers are being protected. They know that they're going to be getting the highest quality ingredients. And again, more than we needed to do to legally be able to sell these products in the United States. And we also decided to add on a supplemental product of cool down wipes, which is essentially our makeup remover wipes. They're infused with avocado and cucumber, because if you have makeup on, you're sweating, you know, whatever the situation is, you want to have a nice cooling effect when you take off the makeup and not add more irritation to your face. So just a little bit of highlights about our overall journey. Initially, we did have angel investors totally by chance. I was talking to a lab that I was friendly with in the Milwaukee area, and I just wanted to rent their space on the weekends. And they were like, put together a concept shoot. And I don't really know what you're talking about if our space is capable of creating those products. So the picture on the left is from 2020. We put a very sketchy ad on Facebook, and we're like, meet us by the dumpster if you want $100, and we're going to take these pictures. And we ended up putting together this really cool photo shoot. But that entity was bought out by, it was a merge and acquisition. So they gave us all of the formulation that we developed with them, all that proprietary information. And then we've been self-funded since 2022. Initially, we wanted it to be an all-natural formulation. It was like beeswax, shea butter, a couple of different essential oils in the pigment. And it was problematic for 2 reasons. A, it was just cracking on the skin. It was too thick and it was causing a lot of irritation. And there also wasn't a preservative in it. So if people are dipping their fingers or different tools into the makeup, or if it's sitting in a hot, sweaty dance bag, you can get bacterial growth. So we're like, you know, in theory, as much as saying it's all natural is very on trend, this isn't realistic for what the product needs to be. So then that's why we decided, okay, we're going to add in these other ingredients, but they're going to be the highest quality possible for our customers. Then in terms of branding journey, we really made a transition from the sort of rave, like dumpster party vibe into cleaning it up in more of a professional performing artist, athletic artist look. Again, the name Account is known in performing arts, like cheerleading, any type of like majorettes, things like that. So we wanted to just make it a little bit more clear who our audience was, rather than the sort of over the top go party on the weekends. It's people who are actually using this for their trade, for their profession. And we are on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I have our website right there if you want to look us up. And like I said, we launched in August. So in addition to all of that, I kind of have this other side project of scientific communication. I really want to, I guess, take us to that well-known saying, if a tree falls and nobody is around to hear it, did it make a sound? So my whole scientific communication side endeavor actually started as a joke, but then it turned into real success. So at the top, it says, I can be very sensitive. My friend and I kind of wanted to do a social experiment because after we moved to Maryland, we got, our exciting new science and chemistry jobs. Some people from back home were like, pretty much it seemed like nobody cared. And it seemed like other people did really basic things or just everyday things and we're getting so much attention. So we're like, what if we took something that we did and made it seem like really simple and just explained it and see how people reacted? So I posted a picture of myself opening an ampule, which if you don't know what that is, it's like a single use sealed glass piece so that the chemical inside is protected for one use only. And I said, this is an ampule, this is what I'm doing in the lab. And I'm like, yeah, maybe people will think this is exciting. But then people I knew from back home were like, oh, I use that in nursing. Is it the same thing? And I was like, well, kind of. It's the same technology, but the chemicals I use in an ampule, you don't want to put in the human body versus a nurse, the chemical would go into the human body. So I'm like, okay, that's interesting. So I started posting some other just random things from in the lab and explaining what they were. People at my work at NIH started saying, oh, I didn't know that's what that was for, or oh, I'm a biologist and I always wondered what that instrument was. So I started to realize that there's a really big lack of transparency in just what happens on the day-to-day in the science field, especially for like a non-scientist. A lot of times in movies and TV shows, the scientists are portrayed as villains and up to no good and have some evil big plan. But in the reality, a lot of what happens on the day-to-day is we're just doing routine practices, routine experiments. So I created like a formal persona on Instagram, LinkedIn, and that led to doing more different events and even led to what brought me here today. So this is my Instagram page. The biggest success with it and the most interaction I had was more so on LinkedIn. Like if you wanted to go back and see what I've posted, it's easiest to do it on Instagram. If you go really, really far back to when I started, that's when kind of the more aesthetic pictures and tutorials and how-tos are on there. I did a series of NMR tutorials because that's what I was passionate about. And I wanted to show that I could break those advanced topics down for other scientists who've never seen NMR before. Now I use it more to amplify different accomplishments and promote causes such as the different organizations that I'm volunteering. If you do want to go into scientific communication or really any type of social media presence, for me, it's most important to promote substance over the smoke and mirrors. Unfortunately, in any field, you'll see people where it's just like a flashy picture or like a trending audio, but it's not really anything interesting or it's not anything educational. I find the educational value or sort of that self-amplification value is what people want to see rather than just something that is fun to look at. So kind of take away from this is that if you care, others will care. This is just a couple of things that I've gotten asked to do over the last year or two. Podcasts, in-person events, webinars, seminars, because I talk about things that are important to me and I want other people to understand what it is that I'm doing or what different types of chemists can do. But on the flip side, you also have to give support to get support. You can't just think people are going to give you things all of the time and you never promote anyone else or you never support other people's event. Just like in person, you can't expect everyone to give you a present on your birthday if you never hang out with your friends, if you never say anything nice to them, if you never spend quality time with them. You have to be a friend to have a friend, and you need to give support in order to get support. It can't be a one-way street. So all of this to be said, time management has been really, really important in my career thus far. And so I'm just going to kind of buzz through a few things. I can share the link to a workshop I did recently about time management, but here's just a few key takeaways. So to start a time management makeover, you really need to sit down with yourself and be real about your time management hygiene. So what are your practices with time management? Identify your goals. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to make more time to study? Are you trying to find a new job? Identify your needs. What don't you have? Could be as simple as you just need a better calendar because you're not writing your schedule down. Or you might really have some different things you need to work through and it might be worth sitting down with like a counselor or a career coach, something like that. Identifying the hurdles and what isn't working for you. Do you procrastinate? Do you say mean things to yourself? Do you have just unhealthy habits that are holding you back? What are your strengths and what are working for you? So what have you done in the past that led to successes? How can you translate that into your new time management journey? And then also identify what hard and fast rules are. This kind of means what you are and are not allowed to do. So kind of like I talked about, for example, with the community outreach initiative, that needed to be separate from my job. Pretty much most jobs I've had my entire career, if I'm doing volunteering and whatnot, it needs to be off the clock, unpaid time. Some organizations pay you to do outreach and different things on the clock, and that's fine, but you just need to know that so you can plan your time accordingly. Don't reinvent the wheel. You know, we all have our own unique struggles, our unique needs, but we're not that unique, and that there's probably some existing techniques that you can pull from. So a few that I like to highlight, I call them need-based techniques. So if disorganization is a problem for you, you literally might just need a planner or a calendar. After COVID, I was really bad at time management just because I hadn't had to think about like a schedule because everyone was at home. So I got a new planner that broke it down from the hour, then down to the day, then to the week, to the month. And now I don't really need to look at a calendar too much once I retrained myself. If you're easily distracted or get stressed by sitting down to do a task, I suggest looking into the Pomodoro method. That's where you set a timer, sit down and work on a task until the timer goes off. That helped me as I started getting to more of the business and scientific writing for writing papers, as well as writing business plans, to just have a fixed time when I'm sitting down and working on only that task. If you need a lot of notes, the technique is called chunking. That's where you try to just remember a short amount of information at a time. So rather than thinking about everything, like all of my schedules, today I just focused on what am I going to do at the academy and for the seminar today. And then when I go home, I'll think about what I'm going to do for my volunteering. I'm not thinking about it all at once. Things that I like to do, so my go-to techniques are compartmentalization. On the right, you can see how I have all of these separate email addresses and social media accounts. I even have separate calendars. So just having everything separate is easier for me rather than having to search through one email address for all of these different things. I can just click on one, clear out those messages, respond to those, and then switch to the next order of business. In terms of boundaries, overall I'm a yes person. I clearly say yes to a lot of things. But if I know I can't take something on or I'm not going to be able to do it well, I just say no. I don't even open up that can of worms. And then a really big thing is honor all of your standing meetings and commitments unless it's a true emergency. If you're that person that tends to cancel a lot at the last minute, that's just creating more stress for you later because other people need to reschedule, or you're going to need to read the meeting notes, or you're going to have to figure out how you're going to compensate. Just don't even go there. If you have something happening, just do it. I'll kind of just glaze over this, but I don't know if you guys are too young to know who Bethany Frankel is, but she was the creator of Skinny Girl brand, and she was on the Real Housewives of New York. She wrote a book that kind of first addressed the idea of food noise and having healthier eating habits starting like in your mind. And so some of her beliefs I translated into time management. So she teaches, you know, your diet is a bank account. I like to think of your time as a bank account. So you need to balance your checkbook. If you stay up too late one night, you know, go to sleep a little bit earlier the next day. And that's okay. It doesn't all have to be all or nothing. Things flux just like your bank account fluxes. Sometimes you need to spend more on something. Sometimes you need to save. Same with your time. She also teaches you can have it all, but not all at once. Again, I think that there's the same thing with time. So sometimes your scheduling overlap. Like you might have an event and a meeting that are happening at night. Be as productive as you can at the event, be intentional, talk to people, exchange numbers, and then maybe leave a couple minutes early to go home to your business meeting or your volunteer meeting. And sometimes a task needs your full attention, and that's okay too. Be honest with the people around you. If you're like, I really need to buckle down and study or write this paper, so I can't do these other things, can you help me out? That's fine. But if you're constantly having to compensate, you're constantly having to ask for help, and you're constantly falling behind, and that's when you kind of need to go back to square one and take a look at your time management hygiene. So the last Couple of slides are just about networking in the district or District of Columbia, Washington, D.C. area. LinkedIn is the big thing. This is actually my phone screen. Feel free to scan if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn or like look at my page as I talk about the next few points. You can apply this to other social media platforms or networking platforms, but I'm just going to kind of focus on LinkedIn. If you are really wanting to get yourself out there, maybe you're getting close to graduation or you're going to be going to a conference soon and you want to create this professional visibility for yourself, make sure your profile is fully complete. So on the left, this is just top to bottom, all of the sections on a LinkedIn page. Once you have them all filled out, you need to make sure your spelling's correct. If you have hyperlinks, make sure they work. Don't leave any of the photos blank because that can look kind of suspicious. Everyone's a stranger until you're not a stranger, but if someone has like missing information and no picture and they don't have any places where they worked, that can come across very suspicious. You could even make your profile private until you have it fully set up how you want and then make it public. So a couple different levels of LinkedIn engagement. The best case is your profile's complete. You're creating your own content, like that savvy scientist content. And you're also engaging in other people's posts. Again, giving support and getting support. Above average, so still good, but not like top tier, would be your profile's complete. You're supporting other people's content and engaging with other posts, but you're not necessarily creating your own materials. Acceptable would be your profile is complete, but you're not really engaging. That could be maybe you're just getting started out, if you're new to the app, but it's not really going to get you anywhere per se. Unacceptable would be an incomplete profile. The information might be out of date and you're not engaging. But what's even worse is if you're being unprofessional, so like saying really highly opinionated things or inflammatory, or sharing overly personal content. You want to avoid that. This is a professional platform. Keep it professional. If you want to expand your network, you can kind of do it organically just by following up with people as you meet them, or you can seek out connections. Either way, you need to think about who you're wanting to connect with. What are your objectives? Like, are you looking for a job, for example? When do you want to work on this? Where will you find those connections? Why haven't you worked on it previously? And how does your profile make you look? So the way to do this is, I call it bottom-up networking. So start by adding people that are the quote-unquote low-hanging fruit, like family, friends, classmates, people that if you sent them an invitation to connect, they're going to say yes because you interact with them routinely. Then you could move on into acquaintances. So you might need to send a little note when you send that invitation. Maybe you briefly met them at a conference, or they did a demonstration for a piece of lab equipment and you met them, or it's a friend of a friend. So they'll kind of know who you are, but you need to remind them. Then after that is when you can start branching out and adding those quote unquote strangers. So maybe someone wrote a paper that you really like and you want to connect with them, or it's some other person that you saw talk and you want to connect with them. So you haven't directly met them, but you now have the skills and sort of the network to show you're a real person. And if you reach out and say, hey, I'd like to connect for these reasons, they're more likely to. And then if you want to increase your visibility, creating content is your best bet. I call them educational, self-promotion, amplification, and personal content. They're all valuable, but I always tend to favor educational content. If you're feeling a little bit lost and overwhelmed, go back to that who, what, where, when, why, and how questions, kind of reassess your motivation and your needs for being on the social media platform. Take it seriously, but don't let it weigh you down. If you wanted to post twice in a week and you only posted once because you're too busy, that's okay. Again, balance your time bank account, balance that time checkbook. Most importantly, never share proprietary information on social media. Don't share exact details about what you're working on, or if you don't want people to know personal information about you aside from the science. What you put out there is what's out there, so be judicious with what you share. And lastly, I just wanted to point out the importance of special interest groups. I define a special interest group as any page or group that brings together a group of users based on a common interest. So it could be an organization, a conference, a business, or a public or private group, such as an alumni group or some sort of topic. I have AWIS, Association for Women in Science, highlighted if anyone wants to check out their website or find them on LinkedIn, because that's actually how we're here today. I was actively involved with AWIS as a member. They did a member spotlight, and then that led to me being invited to give this seminar. So definitely worth putting yourself out there. So wrap up, key final takeaways. Always be open to changing your plans. I'm nowhere near where I thought I was going to be when I was 17, 18 years old. Now at the age of 33, but it's been a really exciting and fulfilling career thus far, despite all of the sort of twists and turns and changes. Your ideas can become a reality. There is that entrepreneur side where I had an idea and at least one of them has come to life and is now on the market. So definitely if you have an idea, it's not something that only other people or people on TV or on Shark Tank can do. You can do it too. It just takes a lot of hard work. Take charge of your time and your network. Again, put as little or as much time into those journeys as you want. And with that being said, I'm happy to take any questions.
That was great. Thank you so much, Savannah. If students have any questions, you're welcome to add them to the chat. Check that. Let's see if you want to speak, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask your question as well. So I guess while students can think of some questions, maybe I'll ask one or two. You did mention, going to these different places for different reasons, and I guess I'm sure you experienced some, obstacles or difficulties along the way in your various roles. Can you think of any, maybe like one or two specific difficulties, and how you overcame them or what you needed to overcome them to get, past those obstacles?
Yeah, one big obstacle was definitely moving to Maryland and starting my contract at NIH during the pandemic. I was kind of at that in between stage where I was like, I would say not like a fully self-assured scientist yet. And I had just switched to doing NMR full time rather than as kind of like a side piece to my previous role. So having to not only learn a new lab, learn a new system was my first time working in a government lab. Again, I was new to automation, all of those things. Really utilizing being online and like sending concise emails, knowing how to look things up, but also just kind of being okay with being alone in the lab and just realizing, okay, I'm like by myself temporarily, but it's going to get better. And then it did. Another obstacle that just kind of has permeated, I guess, different stages of my career is people tend to think I'm a lot younger than I am. And it's happened a lot where someone thinks I'm a student or they'll like introduce me as a title that like isn't mine, or they just assume. I guess it's not like the worst for people to think that you're younger than you are, but it's like if I've done all of these things and you've seen, my resume and my CV, it wouldn't make sense that you think I'm like a 23-year-old trainee and not a 30-year-old staff scientist. So kind of knowing when to just gently remind someone or tell them about myself, or it could be an opportunity to get to know someone. But then if someone just kind of isn't having it, then you need to know when to walk away. Because it's like, okay, you have a certain idea in your mind about what a scientist is. I'm just going to lead by example and kind of prove myself through my work rather than like berating this one specific person because they don't want to hear it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm just going to make one note before I forget. I have the link for the survey in the chat one more time for the students. Let me see. I don't see any specific questions yet. So I'll ask one more. And I think just to follow up on your last answer, I guess, the first half of your answer relates to kind of putting yourself out there, even though you may not be fully confident in with the next step. So I think like taking a chance in, having confidence, of course, in your abilities in your education, but, taking a chance in that you'll be able to learn or to train on that, that new aspect or that new machine that your job might require you to use. You did mention Dr. Cunningham, but whether it's him or others, when it comes to mentorship, I know you talked about, LinkedIn and building your network. And by the way, I'll add to students that you should also connect with your professors because most of us are on LinkedIn as well. But in terms of mentorship, how did you identify mentors, whether it was on the scientific side or the business side, that have helped you, throughout your career?
Yeah, the key is really being willing to ask for help. So I'm really lucky in that I haven't had really bad mentors or a lab supervisor or boss who was mean to me. Like a lot of people haven't had that experience. They've worked with someone who overworked them or was verbally abusive, but I've been really lucky. In that undergrad situation, Dr. Julie Wondergem just saw I was struggling in that semester where I failed everything, and she really sat me down and kind of gave me words of encouragement. And we still keep in touch to this day, literally 10 years later since that happened. Talked about Dr. Cunningham a lot. He was a really great mentor. At NIH, again, my team leader, my group leader, and here at my current role, my lab supervisor, those like natural mentors have all been really positive. So I haven't had to seek outside guidance in terms of a scientific mentor. But in terms of business development, that's really where the volunteering came in handy, because it has turned into me being able to serve as a leader. And when I first found Women in Bio, I literally Googled like young professional women events and went to a coffee chat because I was like, I feel like I'm ready to now take that next step, start thinking about mentoring others, being more of a leader. But I don't really have people on the professional development side. I still really, up until now, had been very much like in the lab in super technical roles and didn't have the more like businessy side. So seeing that, okay, most people who attend these events and are members of this organization are more in biotech and pharma, and they're project managers or venture capitalists, seeing the people that I wasn't at their level yet, but I wanted to be like them. And again, being willing to take a chance and put myself out there, that really helped me take it to the next level.
Yeah, very nice. I'm going to oh, okay, hold on. I see one question in the chat. Okay. So Safe writes, throughout your career, did you ever think that this path is too difficult or question to keep going? How did you know that the path you were on was the right one?
So there's definitely been times when things have felt too hard and too overwhelming. A recent period was this past summer. That was when the automation and NMR work I was doing at NCATS was kind of coming to a spot where we almost had this fully workable platform, which there now is an automated fragment-based screening program. So all of my work came to fruition. But those final stages were happening right at the same time as in my after hours, early mornings, late nights, and on weekends. I was working on 8-count cosmetics to get ready for the product launches in August. So I had two exciting things happening, but also like when you're in a position of like success, sometimes it can be very overwhelming and you almost get imposter syndrome. Like, actually, this can't just be because I'm good enough, or it must be a fluke, or how did this happen? Like you kind of realize how much autonomy and authority you have. And sometimes that can be really scary and overwhelming. So that was a really difficult time, just because when you realize you have all the responsibilities that you ask for, that means you have all of the responsibilities. And that was really stressful. But kind of what I try to focus on, and it's a way that I stay motivated to do all of these things, and why I decided to really get intense about time management so that I could do all of these different things, is kind of going back to what I was talking about filling the gap. Like if there is someone who needs something, or there's a skill that I have that can make something happen, I would feel worse about saying no and walking away. Now there's nuances to, again, not letting people walk all over you, but that's not really what I'm talking about. It's more knowing that by me pushing through a struggle or a problem, or working a little bit extra harder, knowing that I can help something happen versus maybe something not happening by me not helping out. So think about serving others rather than yourself, and you'll find that you end up kind of going further in your career when you put the needs of the project overall first, I think. That like service mindset.
Yeah, excellent. And Ruma just added a comment to the chat that says something along the lines of how did you overcome imposter syndrome? And I think this is probably something that a lot of us have encountered at least at one point or another within our careers.
Yeah, for me, that's when I get really scientific and really technical and just sit down and I don't really make a paper list anymore, but just think about all the things I've done. Like, no, I have actually done these things. I did actually create this protocol. I did actually, file this provisional patent. I actually did get these ingredients approved. Like, kind of look at all the things that you actually did, and then say, okay, what is it that I'm worried about? And if something that you're worried about is something you didn't accomplish, be like, okay, is this something I need to accomplish? Is it something I can accomplish? Or is this just kind of negative talk in my mind? So part of imposter syndrome and self-doubt can be helpful because it can help you highlight areas where you could be doing better. But a lot of the time it is just kind of our fears and our insecurities coming in.
Mhm.
So being able to get into that scientist mindset, get really technical, just be like, this is fact, this is fiction, get rid of the fiction.
Right. I think a lot of our students could probably relate to some of the things that you mentioned that you went through when you were in your technical school or going for your undergraduate degree, in terms of having, some of these outside things going on in life and, not doing so well in one semester or in a couple of classes. But I think, what was really nice is that you you said, okay, I came back the next semester over the summer, really buckled down. I think for some of our students to hear that is really great because, at times some of us do struggle and is, how you come back. So how were you able to kind of pull yourself together and come back after that difficult semester?
Yeah, it is. It was very difficult, and I felt very sad and like disappointed because I'd never been a failure before. But at the same time, I think everyone just needs to fail at some point. Otherwise, you can't deal with life. Like life is full of failures or things that aren't optimal.
Right.
I really leaned heavily on my mentor and my organic chemistry professor, Dr. Julie Wondergem. She sat me down and was like, okay, you like totally bombed organic lecture, but you still got like 100% in the lab. So clearly you have a skill there and an interest there. And she was like, yeah, it stinks and you might feel embarrassed. You have to retake the class now, but in the future, that really doesn't matter. What will matter is if you go out into the world and you haven't mastered the material, like that's going to be a problem. It's not going to be a problem that you had to retake the class. And I was very lucky that I had made some really good friends that year. Even though I was at a low point, sort of professionally and academically, socially, I really blossomed that year and made a whole bunch of new friends. And so they supported me. And now 10 years later, I literally actually was talking with Dr. Wonder Gem before Christmas because she asked me for a letter of recommendation for a teaching award. She's like, oh, you're one of like my most successful students. I would love to hear what you have to say. And I was like, yeah, remember 10 years ago how I failed? And she's like, oh yeah, I totally forgot about that even happened because like it doesn't matter anymore because I went back, mastered the material, and was able to move forward.
Right. So I'll end with this question. You've done so many different things so far in your career. Where do you see the next 5 years taking you?
Yeah, the next 5 years, I think hopefully I don't have too many more big life changes coming up. The last couple of years have been really exciting and
Mhm.
new position and new volunteering and getting the businesses going. But at the same time, that is a lot going on. I'm really enjoying my time here at the Naval Academy. I'd like to stay here, continue to grow in this role. Um, Also continue to work on business ventures with my business partner. Before it was really mostly me doing the product and business development versus now he's getting to focus more on the marketing and strategic partnerships and how are we advertising online. So kind of getting to support him and his skills after him supporting me and like me kind of taking the lead for the last couple of years. And
Mhm.
also just continuing to grow in different ways with the volunteering. I really do enjoy it. Sometimes I'll be like, maybe I should do less things or, I could have an extra hour free time if I didn't have to do this task, but then I do it, see how I'm helping the community or inspiring other people or just doing something that fulfills myself. And it's worth it. So I'd like to continue doing that
Right.
as well.
All right. So continuing to learn, continuing to grow. I think that's something that, we all try to do, even if you think you're at a position where, you may want to stay, right? Just continue that growth. Okay, well, because of the time, I'll conclude the Y seminar for today, and I thank all of the students, faculty, and staff who joined us. And of course, thank you to Savanah for taking the time to impart all of this wisdom and really neat professional journey, share her professional journey with us. And I will email all of the students if we can get that other Y seminar rescheduled. I'll certainly email everyone with that date. All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day.